Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SOCA Mom Summit. This session is so important to our community. I wanted to make sure that we got a chance to talk about this with someone who's really knowledgeable and also passionate about the issue. Today, we have Dr. Kelly. You've seen her before. She is a friend of the SOCA Mom community. So, Dr. Kelly, please tell us about yourself and why this issue is so important to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Kelly. I'm a board-certified endocrinologist, so I treat patients who have diabetes and other hormonal conditions. And I am practicing currently in Atlanta, Georgia, but I hail from the beautiful island of Barbados. So why is this important to me? This is what I do every day. I see patients who have diabetes. I'm really happy to have this discussion with you, especially during this time where we're having a pandemic.
So speaking of the pandemic, a lot of people got very, very concerned when they started talking about underlying conditions. And one of the ones they talk about a lot is diabetes. Why is that something that has an impact on your COVID-19 diagnosis?
So coronavirus is a novel virus, meaning that it's not been around. So we have been learning as we've been going along. Initially, there was a myth in the Black community that it did not affect Black people. And then maybe a month later, we realized that no, Black people were actually disproportionately affected by COVID-19. And what we found out was that some of this was because we have more of the underlying comorbidities, those coexisting conditions that make it difficult for us to recover if we do get COVID-19. And those conditions include hypertension, heart disease, and diabetes. So specifically looking at diabetes, initially there was some data coming out of Louisiana that said that 41% of patients who had COVID-19, who died from COVID-19 had diabetes. So when you have diabetes, you are not at a higher risk of contracting the virus. However, if you do get it, you are at a higher risk of having a serious complication and even dying from it. So why does that happen? One, when you have diabetes, it weakens your immune system. There's something called T cells. We've probably heard about these before. T cells are the cells that go and fight off the viruses, fight off bacteria. And when you have diabetes, your T cells don't respond as quickly. Also, viruses tend to thrive. They tend to multiply in high sugar conditions. So when you link those things together, it's the recipe for disaster. Also, patients who have diabetes tend to also have those other coexisting conditions. So if you have diabetes, you probably also have high blood pressure, and you might have heart disease, and more than likely you're also obese and overweight. So you have one individual who might be obese, who might have hypertension and diabetes and even heart disease. So therefore, that person has all of those risk factors.
So let's take a step back and talk about what is diabetes. So there are two types, and can you tell us what the differences are and which one, or if not both, that we need to be most concerned about as far as the Caribbean community?
So to talk about diabetes, I have to talk about insulin. So insulin is actually a hormone, and that's why as a hormone doctor, I specialize in diabetes. So glucose is the main source of energy for our cells. And glucose is broken down from carbohydrates, right? And insulin is responsible for taking glucose from the bloodstream into the cells where it's needed. When someone has diabetes, for example, if they have type 1 diabetes, their pancreas is not making enough insulin, so the glucose levels build up in the bloodstream. And in type 2 diabetes, the pancreas makes insulin, but the insulin doesn't work. You can think of insulin as the key that opens up the cells to glucose. And in type 2 diabetes, the key doesn't fit anymore. So what happens again? You have insulin resistance in type 2 diabetes, and the glucose builds up in the bloodstream. So type 1 diabetes typically happens in children, adolescents, young adults. It's an autoimmune illness. So our immune system makes antibodies that help us to fight off infection, fight off bacteria, viruses. But in autoimmune illnesses, your immune system makes antibodies that actually attack your own cells. So in type 1 diabetes, antibodies are made that attack the pancreas and causes the pancreas not to work. In type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance is the main culprit. So the insulin is there, but it's just not opening the lock to allow the glucose to come in. Type 2 diabetes is actually the most common type of diabetes. It accounts for about 90% of the overall cases of diabetes. Type 1, the other 10%, 5 to 10%. So most of us in the Caribbean, we know someone, or we ourselves know someone who has type 2 diabetes. It's a lifestyle disease. If you are overweight or obese, you have a higher risk of having type 2 diabetes. If you have a sedentary lifestyle, if your diet is high in carbohydrates, I know from Barbados, we love our salt bread, our sweet bread, our dumplings, our bakes. All over the Caribbean, we eat all of this stuff that are just full of flour, right? And they're going to raise our blood sugars and put us at risk for having type 2 diabetes. If you have a family history of type 2 diabetes, you are also at risk for getting it. If you have one parent who has type 2 diabetes, your risk is about 25%. If you have two parents who have type 2 diabetes, your risk goes up to about 50%. That's a 1 in 2 chance of getting diabetes. The older you are, that's also another risk factor. Patients over the age of 40 to 45, your risk of having diabetes also increases. And you can also have pre-diabetes as well. Pre-diabetes, your blood sugars are not normal, but they're not quite yet in the diabetes range. In America, 88 million people have pre-diabetes. A lot of us don't even know that we have a blood sugar problem. So this really affects the Caribbean. I did my medical school, and I also did my 2 years residency in Barbados. And I remember being on the surgical rotation, and half of the people who were on that floor, on that ward in surgery, half of them had an amputation. So even the complications of diabetes really affects us in the Caribbean.
So let's go back to that pre-diabetes, because I'm not the thinnest person in the world. And I like all the flour and the roti and the rice. And then I like rice with my rice. And then I like peas with my rice, but mostly rice. Right? So I have had a pre-diabetes diagnosis, and I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that there was a period of time that you really could do something about it. There are options for you, and most of those are lifestyle changes. So can you talk to us about some of the lifestyle changes that you can make, especially while we are on these stay-at-home orders and we're more prone to just eat potato chips, comfort foods, stuff like that? What are the steps that we can take to work on this, work on our lifestyle, so that when we come out of all of this, we are not staring a full-on diabetes diagnosis in the face?
So pre-diabetes can be reversed. And even if you do have a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, that can also be reversed, especially if you've had a diagnosis for like 1 to 6 years. So in terms of pre-diabetes, there was a really big study called the Diabetes Prevention Program that looked at patients who had pre-diabetes. So there are a couple of ways of diagnosing diabetes. One way is a test that's called hemoglobin A1C. It's a 3-month blood sugar average. And this is a test that probably most of your doctors are going to be checking, right? To have diabetes, your A1C has to be 6.5% or higher. A normal A1C is 5.7% or lower. Anything between 5.7 and 6.4, we call that prediabetes. So in this study, those patients had an A1C between 5.7 and 6.4%, so they were pre-diabetic. So they separated them into two groups. One group had lifestyle changes with diet and exercise, and they had to lose about 7% of their body weight. Just remember that number, 7% of their body weight. The other group was in the medication arm, and they had a medication called metformin. Metformin is one of the oldest drugs that we have, cheapest drugs that we have available for treatment of diabetes and prediabetes. So one group had lifestyle, the other group had metformin. At the end of the study, what they found was that the lifestyle group did even better than the metformin group. So the lifestyle modifications that you can make are more successful than even medication. So all they had to do was to lose 7% of their body weight if they were pre-diabetic. So if you were like 200 pounds, that's about 15 pounds that you have to lose. It's actually attainable. So steps that you can do for lifestyle modifications: one, exercise. The goal is a minimum of 150 minutes of exercise, aerobic exercise per week. And I tell my patients half an hour, 5 days a week. If you can't do half an hour all at once, you can break it up into 10-minute increments. So you can do 10 minutes in the morning, you can do 10 minutes at lunchtime, and then 10 minutes in the evening. That's still 30 minutes in total. If you tell me I really can't do 30 minutes, I have back pain or knee pain, just go for a 15-minute walk after dinner. Most of us eat our heaviest meal in the evening, then we come and sit on the sofa. So a good strategy is to just go for a quick 15-minute walk after you eat. Try to do something that you enjoy. And what we consider good aerobic exercise would be like running, hiking, walking, swimming, dancing. If you like to do Zumba, you can. Now we're not really going into the gyms anymore, but you can always find a video on YouTube. A lot of these trainers are doing more virtual events. Go on Instagram, you can go on YouTube, and you will certainly find some video that you can dance along to. So just get moving. I also would recommend that you add some resistance training to your exercise routine as well. When they looked at the effect of exercise on A1C lowering, what they found was that a combination of aerobic exercise plus resistance was better than doing either one alone. So resistance, get some dumbbells, just do some strength training. That will also help to lower your A1C. So what about diet? Get rid of the processed stuff. All of the white stuff, white bread, white pasta, rice, lots of rice is not good for you at all. Potatoes, like, a huge baked potato, that's not going to be good for you. As a diabetic or even a pre-diabetic, we still need carbs. Carbs, like I said earlier, are the main energy source for our body. Our brain only uses glucose. So think about when you are really hungry. When I get really hungry, I get irritable. I can't think straight because my brain needs glucose. So you still need glucose.
So when we're talking about the food and the things that we're eating, sugary drinks, okay? We like sorrow, and all of those good bottled drinks like Chubby and champagne cola. I mean, the list is extensive. One of our favorites is Malta. And if you turn that around and look at the label, you basically just take a bag of sugar and just
Exactly.
That's what it is. How do we work on those cravings? And because culturally we are brought up with that, right? And then as we move about the world, we want to take a piece of home with us. And like when I see Chubby in the grocery store, I'm like, oh, I'm not thinking about prediabetes. I'm not thinking about any of those things. I'm thinking about how good that tastes and how it feels. So how do we work around those cultural pulls that we have to think more consciously about our health and our sugar intake?
So I totally get that. So maybe about 4 or 5 months ago, I found a Caribbean spot here in Atlanta that makes the absolute best roti. So my routine was on Fridays when I'm off, like today, I would go for a hike at Stone Mountain and then make my way over and get some roti. So I was having roti every single week until I saw that my midsection was growing. And then I said, you know what, something has to change. So I didn't have any last week, and I'm not going to have any today. So it all comes down to your decisions and what you want the most. I understand when I go into that restaurant and I hear soca playing and I hear Caribbean accents, when I come home and I eat that roti, I feel comforted, especially during this time of the pandemic where I'm away from family. It feels comforting. When we think about food, we think about gathering, right? We as Black people, as Caribbean people, when we think about food, we think about your aunt coming over, your grandmother, your cousins, and we all just eating our food. So I get that it's comforting. I get that it makes us feel more connected. But we really have to make some changes for our health. When it comes to those sugary drinks, I tell my patients just cut them out completely. I know it sounds really drastic, but I think I read in a study somewhere that if you were having like a can of soda every day, like a Coke or something, and you cut it out, you could lose 15 pounds in a year. Let that sink in. A can of soda a day, if you eliminate that, you could lose 15 pounds in a year. Like Eva said, drinking those sugary drinks are literally like pouring sugar in your mouth. And if you have diabetes or pre-diabetes, it's going to worsen your condition. So we have to train our taste buds. Before I moved here, I never had whole wheat pasta. Then I said to myself, having the whole wheat pasta is going to introduce more fiber in the meals. So I started having it. And now I cannot eat normal pasta because my taste buds have been trained for brown rice. It's been trained for whole wheat pasta. So we have to start to make better decisions for ourselves. I'm not telling you that once in a while you can't have a chubby, or once in a while you can't have some roti. You can treat yourself. That's allowed. You can treat yourself. If you go to a celebration or a gathering, have your roti, have your sweet bread or your dumplings, but something you should not be doing this every single day at our homes. And look at this. I have my water, and I'm going to get through this water by the end of the day. And we need to start drinking more water. Stop drinking the soda. Have more water.
That's hard. But I will say this. I was a person who, I didn't grow up drinking water. But my kids, they grew up drinking water. Mainly because, I'm going to be honest, the cost of juice was dumb. And I was like, okay, you all are going through, and I used to dilute it with water just for the sugar aspect of it, right? But the cost was insane. But a gallon of purified water was 58 cents. So I said, gallon of juice, $4.95. Gallon of water, if it doesn't come from the tap, 58 cents. Water it is. When you got 3 children, so even if
it's better for them too.
And it's crazy. Like, they didn't get pimples as fast as I did as a teenager, and like you said, the hormonal changes, like you can tell when they've had artificial flavors and colors and they're having a lot of pasta and pizza, their mood after like 13 is, I don't like it. So, they're not worried about their midsection, but you're so unpleasant. But when they're eating good things, when they're eating their fruit and vegetables, and they're getting used to whole wheat pasta too. They're getting used to the lentil pasta, stuff like that. Their mood is a lot nicer.
You make a really good point, Eva. So initially we thought that type 2 diabetes only happened in adults, but because our children are getting fatter and fatter, type 2 diabetes is actually also happening in children. So I've seen children as young as 11 or 12 on metformin because they have diabetes. And I really think this needs to be a family affair, because if our children never see us drinking water, if our children never see us exercising outside or doing things as a family in terms of fitness, more than likely they're not going to have those habits as they go into young adulthood. So we as a community need to do better for our children. So I know it's a little bit tough now with the pandemic where people aren't really, going outdoors as much as before, but really a child should only have an hour of screen time per day. Now, a lot of us, because we're our parents, a lot of us as parents are like, a little overwhelmed right now with homeschooling, and when they were homeschooling and working, we just, put the kid in front of a screen. But really, a kid is supposed to have an hour of screen time per day, and they're supposed to be running around the rest of the day, So we need to do better in terms of being a good example for our children. As a parent, you have control over what you bring into your house. So it always blew my mind how a child could be grossly obese and have diabetes, when as a parent, you decide if you give them juice or if you give them water, or if you buy all the sugary snacks for them. So we definitely need to do better.
And it's funny that you would say that parents have that control. We think we don't, especially when the kids are addicted to the sugar.
Yeah.
And their mood is rough, right? So you say, you know what? I need you to shut up and leave me alone and stop being so rude. So how about I just give you what you want? And it's like giving them the little thing they're addicted to deal. But that's the thing that's making them so difficult to deal with. So it's kind of a catch-22, and we have to make those decisions.
Sugar is addictive. Like when you come off sugar, is like a crack addict coming off crack.
Right.
Literally, the center in the brain that lights up when someone is coming off crack is lit up when someone is coming off sugar. Like I started a Whole30 diet a couple days ago, and that first day I could not think straight. I had a headache. I went to the grocery store to get some fruits and vegetables, and literally as I was walking past diet soda, and as I was walking past like Cheetos, literally I felt the food talking to me, buying me. So sugar.
It's like, you miss
so
me.
Addictive. I literally, it was talking to me. So your children are going to feel like they are coming off crack when they come off sugar. But after a few days, like a week and a half, those cravings come down. So parents, please, now we don't want to have more overweight and obese young adults, and who have diabetes. So now is the time to really make changes for your family.
We could do this all day.
Yes.
Like all day, because sugar and culture for Caribbean people, they go together, right? Those flowery things, like you were saying, they all just kind of go together, and we want to do it all at once. We want to go to the party, and you look in the cooler, there's water off in the corner.
Of course, no one wants the water.
I mean, that champagne cola tastes so much better with roti than water does. But like you said, we could train our taste buds. We can work on that. And this is a great time to do that. One of the things that we do now is a lot of Amazon Fresh and shopping online, Instacart, stuff like that. Looking at that list and being like, are we really about to do that? So it kind of makes you be accountable. And it's a perk, if there are any, of this particular time that we are in. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of this with us. Now, you are more than just an amazing board certified endocrinologist. You do a lot of other things. Can you just tell us about the session that you have coming up? It's a premium session, which means it's a small group setting and people get to connect directly with you. So tell us more about that session, why it's important, and where it came from in your life.
I am also an author, speaker, and coach. I help high-performing women overcome past hurt to have a happy and healthy relationship. And I'm passionate about this because this is what I had to do in my own life. Even though I was a successful doctor, I still had issues surrounding my worth, if I was good enough, my self-esteem. And this caused me to be in a string of toxic relationships. And it culminated in I was getting married, and the engagement fell apart after I moved all the way to Atlanta to be with him. And I had to put my life back together. And the more that I talked about my story, I realized that there's so many high-performing women. We are lawyers, doctors, small business owners, entrepreneurs. We are killing it in our professional and financial life. But then when it comes to our relationships, we are on a struggle bus. And no one talks about this. So I actually wrote a book. It's called Bounce Back to Better You, where I share how I recovered from my broken engagement. And I also help other women overcome their past hurt so they can have a happy and healthy relationship. So I'm having a premium webinar tomorrow as part of the Soca Mom Summit, where I'll be going into more detail about my story, my book, and the strategies that I use to become happy again. So I look forward to seeing you guys there.
And I think this is a really important session, mainly because we're so focused on coronavirus and well, not so much riots anymore, but the protesting and all of the things we're dealing with globally with race, that we're not thinking about the fact that we are whole human beings. We were in love before coronavirus. We were in relationships. We may have had broken relationships. So there's a lot of things that are still going on that we're not dealing with. And we don't want to come out of this. 2020 is still our year, right?
It sure is.
Murder hornets and all, it's still our year. And we want to come out of this better and ready for 2021 and all of the great things that that year has in store for us. So if you are really, really looking forward to a free session that is happening at the same time as Dr. Kelly's paid session, please go to the paid session. And I'm going to tell you why. When you go to SocaMomSummit.com, you can look at the top and it says, watch the replay. These sessions, all of the free sessions have a replay, and that will be available to you in perpetuity, forever. You can watch it whenever you want, but you will not always have access to Dr. Kelly and get to hear from her and ask her questions. You won't always have that. So please take advantage of the paid sessions before the free ones. Okay? Thank you so much for joining us for the Soca Mom Summit. I hope you got a lot out of this session. I know I did. If you want to learn more about Dr. Kelly, register for her session. You go to SocaMomSummit.com, click on her speaker page, and all of the sessions that she's doing are listed there. Okay? Including the premium session. Jump in on that while you can. All right, everybody, have a fabulous day and enjoy the rest of the summit. Bye.